Hey folks, this is Jason Lewis, the producer of the From the Shadows podcast. I just want to remind you about our website, fromtheshadowspodcast.com. We have a Facebook page. We would appreciate it if you like and follow. Also, join our discussion group on Facebook called After the Shadows. We have a Twitter feed. Please follow us on Twitter. It can be found with @podcast_from. Follow us on Instagram @From the Shadows Podcast. We have a YouTube channel. Go to the search bar at YouTube and put From the Shadows Podcast, and please subscribe to that channel. We are also on the Odyssey Radio Network, and we can be found there at odyssey1.com. We're still on the traditional podcatchers that everybody loves to listen to us on. We get a lot of feedback, so please rate the podcast and communicate with whether you're on Spotify, Stitcher, TuneIn, Apple Podcasts, Podbean, or Google Podcasts. We're there, and we appreciate it when you leave comments for us. Well, that's all I have for you right now, folks, and thanks for being a part of the From the Shadows podcast family. So with that being said, let's get this episode started. Now I'm going to turn you over to your host, Shanegrove.
So Howler, last weekend I was at like a little camp out, and somebody around the campfire, a big fan of ours, she wanted me to ask you if there was any occasion during your illustrious work career out on the road that you ever had to deliver a baby.
Well, you're gonna have to forgive me because I'm sick.
That's okay. I think we're all a little bit sick in our own way.
I was worried about dying here, and I thought I'd better go ahead with this week's podcast. This could be my legacy if I die. I can be like Lenny Bruce, one of these guys.
We'll tell you. Dead. Well, listen. Do not end up with your pants down and a needle in your arm off the toilet, because that's how Lenny Bruce ended up.
Wow.
How would you even know that? I don't know what's worse, the fact that you would say that, or that you would know that.
I would know that because I just listened to the podcast that Disgraceland that's chronicling.
That's a podcast. Disgraceland's a podcast.
It's called Disgraceland. It's great. It's
Dude,
rocking.
I wish I would have thought about that. That's a good one.
It's fantastic. It's this. I can't think of the guy's name, but it's a lot of music. It's like it's the tales from music that he sets out and tells the story of, and this is a special. I don't know how many parter, but it's on Phil Spector. And the last
that's a good one in there. You want to talk about a guy that had it all, and I don't even know what to say. You can't say lost it. He knows where he's at. He just can't get it because he's behind bars. But
that's right. And then the first episode was his relationship with Lenny Bruce at the tail end of Lenny Bruce's.
You mean they were buddies or something?
They were buddies. They were They were acquaintances, and basically used each other for what they needed.
Podcasters do now.
What's that?
I said kind of like podcasters do now.
Yeah,
no,
that's right.
Kidding. Hey, that's really just sticks in my head because I've been watching. You see that great Tarantino movie, Once Upon a Time in L.A.?
I've not watched that yet, but
anyhow, so which made me, I'm a Wikipedia addict. So don't ever tell me Wikipedia's not right because it'll destroy me. I've been reading about those Tate LaBianca murders, and Hollywood must have been a crazy place back in the late 60s. I mean, it still is now. I guess. I've been there half a dozen times in the last few years. It's full of homeless people and bums, but I don't see any hippies. Anyway, that was an odd time, and I'm not for sure Spector wasn't loosely around Tate.
He was.
I mean, he was a real deal back in the day.
He was, and that was part of it. Because the second episode was Ronnie Spector, and so they have a voice actor playing Ronnie Spector. And she talks about how freaked out Phil was after those murders, and I think all of Hollywood was. And he had his bodyguard sleeping in the basement just in case they got broken into. They put a chain link fence around. I mean, imagine, I think they lived like in a huge mansion. I think they said 21 room. They put a chain link fence around it to try to keep the hippies out, or whoever it was that.
And that's what I don't understand, because he, I mean, he has money now. He really had money back then, right?
Oh,
and
yeah.
You just wonder why you just get on a plane and fly to Hawaii. Those hippies can't swim that ocean, or fly over to Europe for a month or two. You know what I mean?
It's funny you say that. That was the one thing that Lenny Bruce actually said was wherever he would perform a lot in San Francisco, and Phil Spector, they said quite often, would, on the spur of the moment, go get on an airplane, fly to San Francisco on a Sunday night to catch Lenny Bruce's midnight show at the one comedy club in San Francisco. And he said that's the kind of money that Phil Spector had back in the day. That at 8, 9 o'clock at night, he could just say, "Hey, I need a plane, fly me to San Francisco. I want to make sure I'm there when Lenny Bruce goes on stage."
There you go. I used to read a lot of cowboy lore, and I know we're getting off on the thing, but off on a tangent here. But
I know this is supposed to be about babies.
I know. We'll get back to them. They'll probably will barge in here any second now. I can tell you what they look like, years later. Tom Mix, the Jewish rodeo star of the silent era from Pennsylvania.
Mm-hmm.
From Mix, Pennsylvania, actually. My ex-Pennsylvania is the reason where he got his name, I think. Anyway, when he got killed, what killed him in this car wreck was, he had a, doggone it, I can't think of what kind of two-seat convertible he had at the time, but he had an aluminum case, like aluminum suitcase, on the luggage rack. Remember how some of them would have like a chrome luggage rack on the back?
On the trunk or whatever?
On the trunk, yeah.
Yep.
So he had a aluminum suitcase, and it came loose and hit him in the back of the head, but he had like $25,000 or $30,000 cash in that thing. Now, and this is like 1932 or 33. So, I mean, if you're driving around with $30,000 cash in your pocket, you rolling in it back in them days. And then I read another book about John Wayne back in his prime. And when they would rap in the 50s, after rapping a movie, they would get in the car, and a whole, he had I don't want to say an entourage, but he had half a dozen guys that they either directed him or produced him or were in all his movies, stunt doubles and whatever. So he had a half a dozen or a dozen guys, and they would go down to Mexico, Baja Peninsula or whatever, and just drink and smoke for 6 or 8 weeks.
For the record, $30,000 in 1930 is worth about $440,000 today.
Yeah, and even that's a good. I mean, that's walking around money there, and
that's walking way around.
In the John Wayne, I don't remember what. So they would have to go into the bank and cash a check or get money, because there was no Corelli credit cards, there's no ATMs, there was no, and they would have to leave town with $400,000 in their pocket, and hopefully they wouldn't run out, I guess,
Jeez.
I mean, that was stuff. And can you imagine back in them days? So there was no phones, there was no television, no cameras, no camera phones. I mean, you want to talk about off the hook? I'm sure those cats could do almost anything, right?
Well,
they did.
I mean, Hollywood stuff is legendary, man. Legendary.
I mean, old Hollywood. No, I don't know about these new people. Just like everything, the gene pool's so watered down. We don't have no real doers anymore. But so Hollywood probably as weak as we are, right?
Well, so let's circle back from Hollywood. Let's talk about the walking around money. It wouldn't last very long with kids. So let's talk about some of these kids that are spending all our money.
So anyway, you asked about delivering a baby.
Yeah. Did you ever deliver a baby?
I almost did. I chickened out at the last minute and drove to the hospital. And what happened is, let me back up. When I was a cop, that was one of the first things they taught you. Hey, if you ever catch somebody speeding and they say they're on their way to the hospital, take them to the hospital. Kind of force their hand, so to speak. Right? So I used to live over in a place called Owatonna, Minnesota, and my wife was pregnant, and I don't remember about she wasn't due for another 5 or 4, 5, 6 weeks. So we thought we had a window of time there, and I had a friend of mine that was a big farmer from down here in central Missouri, and he came up there, and he's also at that time he was a volunteer fireman. Now he's a fire captain at a pretty decent sized fire department. He might have been a rookie fireman. It doesn't matter. He was up there in Minnesota to get an ag implement of some kind, and he called me, stopped by my house, and we ran over to Rochester, Minnesota, which doesn't mean anything to you guys, but if you're in Minnesota, it's about 40 miles, give or take. We're over there, and I don't remember why we even wanted to go to Rochester. It doesn't matter. My wife wanted to go shopping. Anyway, it doesn't matter. But we stopped to eat at a place called Boston Market. We went in. My wife ordered first. She went and sat down. Me and my buddy of mine were ordering, and I remember we got our drink cups. And as soon as we got to the table, my wife's sitting there just white as a ghost. And my wife's a registered nurse, so medical things don't. And at that time, she was a medical officer in the Air Force Reserve still, so she really had her shit together. And but she's white as a ghost, and she said, "I think I'm having a baby." And I said, "Why would you say that?" And she said, "My water broke." And for you girls who went through that before, so of course I looked underneath the table, and she had a brand new pair of blue jeans. It's like shorts on. This is July, and it was like almost blue water. It kind of freaked her out a little bit, and she didn't realize it was the blue jean material and the new shorts that did that, denim shorts. So my fire buddy gets over there, and he goes, "Yep." So he says, "Hold on," and he walked over the counter and told the Boston Market, "Can we get those to go?" And because change we always laugh.
You can't have a baby on an empty stomach, right?
Yeah, so anyway, I walked her out in the truck, and I had at this time, because you're out in Ohio, well, you're in car country, so I had a big block Suburban.
Oh, yeah.
Chevrolet. Oh, yeah, 98, 99, 454, Silverado 3/4 ton, 4-wheel drive Suburban. But so I was just going to take, you're in big, the Mayo Clinic's there, right? We're within 3 miles of 3 hospitals. She didn't want to do that. She wants to drive all the way back to Owatonna to her doctor. Yeah.
No.
See where this is going? So,
yeah, where this is going.
I put her in the front seat. I'm in the driver's side. She's ready to go. I'm waiting for Kelly to come out. That's my buddy with the to-go boxes. He gets all the stuff in the truck. If we're me and him to be sitting at the hospital, we might as well get our food, right? So instead of going to the hospital, he's trying to figure out where the nearest hospital. No, she wants to drive back home. So the further we got a 40-mile drive. So I'm out there and you're trying to figure out, should I pass people? Should I not pass people? Should I do this? Should I do that? Like the level of energy that did not need to be there was there. And so instead of hanging out and delivering my kid or bringing to the nearest hospital, I drove her 45 miles to the one where her doctor was at. And I don't know, a few hours later we had a baby. So that was the closest I ever come to actually having a baby. Delivering was my own. Now the other baby story, the one I always tell at the office, and before I retired, all these guys would talk about how committed they were, or this or that or whatever. But after I spent a lot of time working in Washington, D.C. after 9/11, and my wife was pregnant, and she calls me one day. I called her from Washington, and she called me, and she said, "Hey, I think I'm having a baby." So I said, "Are you serious?" And she said, "Yeah." And I said, "Okay, well, hold on. I'll call the office." I called the office and called my boss. My boss had been around for a long time, okay? And I said, "Hey, man, my wife just called, and she thinks her water just broke for this time, and she's going to have this baby." And he says, "Well, what do you want me to do about it?" And I said, now, part of this deal was, on my schedule, I explained to him my wife's going to have this baby. And he said, "Yeah, but you can keep doing this Washington thing till the due date, right?" I said, "Well, I don't know. My last one comes 6 weeks early." So he's like, "Well, you stick it out, and if you really need, if it's getting close, we can fly you home. So here I am taking it for the Team America, So when I call him, his response was, "What do you want me to do about it?"
Well, that's Team America, right?
I said, "How about effing driving over there and taking her to the effing hospital because I'm in Washington D.C. where you effing wanted me to." and I like to tell them stories now because now, right after 9/11, everybody in America was worried about stuff, especially in the executive branch where I work. People were worried about a lot of stuff happening. They really thought the next thing was going to happen any second now. So, and now the younger coworkers I had right before I retired, well, I mean, they give them on special assignments, desk duty, and everything for a month or two leading up to having their kids, and they let them do all this special stuff. And I said, so we didn't have nothing special back then. I mean, you had it, you had one in the chamber and you was ready to go. So my boss, now they did fly me home. I was back in Minneapolis about 4.5 or 5 hours. And, but yeah, and my boss had to leave the field office because I wasn't really from there. So my wife, we didn't have a whole lot of support network. It's a long story. We moved a lot, but my boss had to go over with one of the other guys and go pick her up and take her to the hospital and drop her off. And by the time I got home, they picked her up in the U.S. government car. You had these badass federal law enforcement guys to tell you about all the ass they were going to kick, but you have to call them for your wife having a baby, and they collapse on you. So I mean, they're the counterterrorism mission. They're able to do it, right? No questions asked. But you throw something on them like your wife's having a kid, go pick her up and meet me at the hospital. They can't. I don't say that, and I couldn't figure out the one because he had 6 kids on his own. So you'd think by that time he'd be Johnny on the spot. He wasn't, but he was another different generation. He was of the generation I think that didn't really help.
But wait a second, you had an Amish guy working in Homeland Security?
He was about like an Amish guy. He was an old, I shouldn't even say this, but he was an old Vietnam era Catholic guy that just I don't know. He was good at working, but I don't know how he'd be around the house because I don't know. Better watch what I say now. He ran on. The Catholic's mad at me, but he was married to them old gals. It did not work outside the home. It didn't think nothing of it. Sitting there 7 days a week with laundry and groceries and kids.
So you made it back, and she didn't have the baby before you made it back?
Until I got back. She held it. I told her on the phone, I said, you need to, you call back to basic training, and you got to hold that kid until I get there. Sometimes are tough,
Wow.
I said, there's gals in Africa right now having a kid worried about a lion getting in a tent or something, or the hut, and they gotta hold it in. So sitting in that hospital, they can't eat. That'll be a breeze.
Yeah, what a great analogy. There's somebody in Africa worried about a lion getting big. Oh,
I could have said India and tiger. A lot of people don't realize tigers are from India. That's another whole thing.
Thank you for tuning in to this week's episode of the From the Shadows podcast. Until next time, never shy away from the darkness or what may be lurking in the shadows. We are out.